ICO is one of Sony's first-party PS2 games, and it's the one to which the company's devoted the least amount of promotional resources. The game is a 3D adventure, much in the spirit of Soul Reaver, Ocarina of Time, things like that, but the way its mechanics are handled and the way through which you view the game really set it apart from anything that those games resemble. The story basically involves a young kid who's apparently a mutant of some sort. He has a pair of horns. Early on, the story doesn't really get too much into it, but you do learn that the village to which he's native has a tradition of sacrificing young boys with those horns. Not sacrificing in a traditional sense, but they sort of cart them off to this remote castle where they're locked up and God knows what's made to happen to them. As you'd imagine, a lot of the gameplay revolves around making your way through this castle, disarming traps, clearing obstacles, solving puzzles, mostly physical puzzles and that sort of thing. In many ways, it's a lot like the old game Prince of Persia, but you know, albeit just decked out in full 3D with this whole crazy visual scheme. The game really does look, it's pretty breathtaking to look at, just the way that the vistas are rendered in all this grandeur. Photorealistic textures, which, you know, they are kind of inconsistent in some areas. They look kind of hazy, but for the most part they do, you know. It's a lot of stone in the game, obviously, and the stone actually looks like the rock that you see outside in planet Earth. Early on, one of the earlier sequences involves you rescuing this young girl. She's very ghostly, very pale, sort of almost translucent, and there's an ethereal quality about her. Much of ICO's gameplay revolves around his interactions with her, how he helps her traverse all these obstacles, how most of the puzzles actually revolve around figuring out how to get her to where she has to be without having her fall to her death, or vice versa, having you fall to your death. Most of the more interesting interactions really do occur outside of the game story, though. You can tell that a good deal of thought was put into the way that ICO and the girl interact with each other on a physical and visual level. You know, everything from the way they look when they run together, the way they sort of like gently tug each other, the way she starts when he tugs at her, and vice versa. The way that just the way they're animated when they're helping each other. When one is teetering on some precarious ledge, the way that the way that every single animation there is accentuated, even to the way that they both sit on those like little spectral couches, which serve as a save points, the way they sort of sit next to each other and fall asleep. There's a whole lot of thought that went into that, and it really does sort of make the more mundane moments of gameplay much more enjoyable. As we mentioned earlier, most of the gameplay in ICO revolves around your interaction with the girl. You know, how you help her cross these impassable chasms, how you defend her from demons and that sort of thing. The strange thing is, though, the few cutscenes that are in the game feature no real spoken dialogue between them. I mean, they do try to communicate with each other, but there is a definite linguistic barrier there. While ICO's words will appear as text on the screen, the girls will appear as these arcane symbols that you can't decipher. And one of the secrets in the game is, once you beat it through the first time around, you will be able to go through it again and actually learn what the girl is saying. Early on in the game, you'll realize that the girl is being hunted by this group of shadowy demons that seem to materialize out of thin air at given points throughout the game. Now, as ICO, rather in ICO, one of the only ways in which you could lose the game is either by falling off, super high platform, or by having the girl successfully carted away by these demons. So as they appear, what you basically have to do is combat them with your stick or what other weapon you happen to have before they're able to take her away. The game's combat system is pretty simple. It's basically your standard 3-hit combo. He just sort of like swings and does a uppercut with a stick. It really leaves you with the impression that the game is not very combat focused. It really isn't. It's sort of in there to mix things up, to sort of keep you on your toes. But much of the game is more centered towards traversing the environments, figuring out puzzles, and just sort of taking all that in. The demons themselves though look pretty cool. The strange wispy smoke effect used to render them. And as you hit them, you'll see parts of their bodies sort of just dissipate into thin air, and even when they're emerging, blue lights sort of circle around them, and the whole gangs of them just sort of sprout out from this sort of shadowy portal. And even when they're carrying the girl away, the effect is pretty interesting. There really hasn't been a game like this in a long time. A game that sort of focuses on the minute-to-minute minutia of gameplay, that's so detail-oriented that it really makes going through it that way a pleasure. Sad fact is though that many people won't really pay too much attention to this one, as it was very sorely underpromoted by Sony for whatever reason. So we do urge you to check this out, catch up on the coverage, and see if it seems like it's your bag. If so, then you really can't go wrong with it. It's a very moving game on a few levels.